Hello and welcome. Being online a lot, as I am, I have seen a lot of folks with their crochet and knitting hot takes, and I thought I'd make a video of my own. So let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts on my hot takes or if you have any of your own that I've not mentioned. Hook and needle size is completely up to you. With some caveat. So it can depend on the yarn. Obviously, the caveats are if you're using very fine yarn or very bulky yarn, but a lot of yarns that sort of sit in the sort of medium range can be used with almost any hook from between 3 millimeters to 7 millimeters, depending on how you want like the fit and the drape and the weave to be on whatever it is that you're making. You don't have to go with whatever the hook size is suggested on the yarn itself. Gauge swatching isn't always necessary. So there will be some patterns that you come across which will need a gauge swatch because you'll need to know exactly how to do the thing because the way that they've written the pattern is that you need to do the gauge swatch. But otherwise, I tend not to bother just purely because sometimes the gauge swatch actually isn't right, or at least in my experience it hasn't been. Like I've done things where I've done a gauge swatch, I've worked out how many stitches per how inch or centimeters or whatever and how many rows, and then when I've come to make the thing based on that measurement, it's actually been a lot bigger or a lot smaller. I don't know if it's maybe I'm doing the gauge swatching wrong, but either way, you don't have to do that way. A lot can be learned from doing something wrong and then changing the way that you're doing it. Or sometimes, depending on what you're making, you can just sort of figure it out as you go, start making it, and then when it gets to what you think looks about right, measure it against yourself, the person, or whatever it is, and change how you're doing it from there. Frogging something that you've made isn't a waste of time. So if you've gone wrong while making something, you've learnt something in the process, and there's no harm in frogging that back and then starting again from the point where you went wrong or, however the situation might be. But you shouldn't feel like you have failed at something if you have to do that. Like everything has learning points in it. You're never going to be 100% perfect at everything whenever you try to do it. It can be frustrating, especially if you end up having to do it a couple of times, but you will learn from something, and in your journey, that will help you further on down the line. Also, if you're making something and you're partway through it and you're not enjoying it, then there's also no shame in frogging that and using that yarn for something else. There have been times where I've been in the middle of making something, it's been a long project, and I've just gone, you know what? I actually don't like this. I'm never going to wear it if it's something I'm making for myself, obviously. So there's no point me finishing this. I'll just pull it apart and start again. I've done it a few times. I didn't used to do it. I used to force myself to finish everything, but now I'm happy to frog things if it doesn't fit. It's like the Marie Kondo, get rid of it if it doesn't spark joy. There's no right or wrong way to hold knitting needles or crochet hooks, and also no wrong or right way to do those stitches. As long as the stitch comes out looking how you want it to, then I would say that you're doing it right. I've seen a fair few crocheters who hold their hooks still and move the yarn around it like you would with knitting, rather than moving the hook to the yarn, if that makes sense. And the thing is, I'm pretty sure that they get comments all the time saying you're doing it wrong, but they always end up making something that looks nice and looks really good and looks how it was intending to. So, how were they doing it wrong? Acrylic yarn is great, actually. I have seen a lot of yarn snobbery over the years saying that if you want to make good things, it has to be with natural fibres. However, acrylic is good because it's cheaper, it's good for beginners and folks with less money, it's easy to use and reuse if you need to pull the thing apart or if you're learning, and it doesn't shrink or warp as easily as, say, sheep's wool does when it's being washed. It can be machine washed and it can feel nicer on the hands while you're working with it. And if you're vegan, you know that if it's 100% acrylic, it's not got any animal fiber in it whatsoever. You don't have to turn your hobby into a job. So some folks will tell crafters that they should monetize their hobby by selling the finished items, and it's completely optional. Not everything has to make you money. I tried it myself and I ended up resenting having to do it because I wasn't enjoying the things that I was making. And I was spending time that I could have spent making things on having to do like shop admin instead. And I didn't like it. If you want to do it, then that's absolutely something that you can do. And a lot of people have made a decent living out of it over the years. But what I'm saying is you don't have to do it. You don't have to sew things together. So I have said this before, and I will likely keep saying it until the end of time, but I hate having to sew things together when I'm knitted or crocheted them. So when I'm knitting something, if it has panels, I will either work out a way where I can like knit the panels together as I go rather than having to sew it up at the end, or if I can do it in the round instead. If you if you watch my video about how many blankets I made last year, you'll know that I avoided making granny square blankets for years because I didn't want to have to sew them together. And then when I learnt the join as you go method, it was absolutely fantastic. I've made so much stuff using that method, not just blankets. I made a hat recently where I used it, this cardigan, and pretty much every other hexagon or octagon cardigan that I've ever made since January last year. I've used the same process on. Like this cardigan, for example, if I'd sewn it, there would be a really obvious line where the join is. I can see it, it's here along this line there, but it looks more in keeping with the rest of the cardigan that unless you're looking for it, it is hard to tell where the joins are. And finally, however you make things is the right way. As long as the finished item looks and works how you wanted it to, you've done it the right way. Thank you for watching if you've made it this far. If you'd like to find me elsewhere, there is a link to my link tree in the doobly doo. Bye for now.